I call it the purgatories of scaling. That's the first purgatory, is when you start getting yourself off the truck.
Have you noticed any patterns, people that aren't using bookkeepers right now, that when they do, it's like, oh, these couple things fall into place right away?
We feel like it's macho to pay for stuff in full in cash. Like, oh, I bought that thing cash, right? It's the dumbest thing we can do.
Today's episode is about bookkeeping, and before you click away, this one is going to make you money. Bookkeeping is one of those things that we all ignore because it's boring and tedious, but when given the proper attention and you do just like the minimum amount required, it can have an incredible return on your time. And that's what we're looking for, right? Those decisions that create leverage. That's how you build a business. We have to look at the boring things. And luckily for you, Dan Platta, founder, CEO of Best Damn Bookkeeping, who manages hundreds of clients and hundreds of millions of dollars in bookkeeping and all that stuff, he's very interesting. So he'll keep you engaged the whole time. He tells stories. We talk more than just bookkeeping. We talk about recruiting and really growing your home service business. This one's a great one. Let's get to it.
So I was kicking around names. The best other name that I had was Bookkeeping, but I didn't know how many B's to put in it for like the URL. And then I also had a client with a stutter, and I was like, man, it's funny until you're just a dick. And so I didn't go with Bookkeeping. And Bobby was like, you need to call it the Best Damn Bookkeeping Company around or whatever. And so that when somebody asks one of your clients like, hey, who do you use for bookkeeping, they have to say, well, I use the Best Damn Bookkeeping Company around.
Yeah.
I was like, I like that approach, but that's a pretty hairy URL as well. And so I just shortened it up to Best Damn Bookkeeping.
Nice.
And it's a good fit. I got like a beer on the logo on my shoes here. Like my logo for my company has a beer in it. And I'm from Central Wisconsin, so I'm always drinking a beer when I'm up on stage talking to people and whatever. So I figured, like, if I'm going to be the beer drinking bookkeeping nerd up on stage, I might as well have an edgy name too.
Yeah.
Just embrace it. It lets you know we take our business seriously. We're going to be the best, but we also like to have fun while we do it.
I sometimes wonder if people want that really boring bookkeeper or accountant or whatever because they just want to know their numbers are safe.
Mm-hmm.
Did that ever did that come to mind? It's like, oh, do I really, like, I love Dan as a person. Is he going to be drunk when he's doing my books?
I had two people that were like, literally came right out. One of them's a really good affiliate of mine, and her and I go a long ways back, and she was like, I do not like that name, Dan. And I was like, well, sorry. and then shortly thereafter, she named a thing Best Darn something or other, like a boot camp thing that she did. And I was like, oh, she did like it. She just doesn't like the swears. She's a Southern gal. She didn't like the swears in there. And then another guy that's a client of ours, came like during the demo. He's like, I really don't like your name. And now he's like one of our best clients. And so I haven't seen it actually be I have had people that think it's too aggressive, but I'm just like, I don't know. Like, you just got to be yourself. We have no shortage of clients. We have no shortage of leads. And one of the best pieces of advice I ever got from my buddy Keith Kelfis, actually when I first got into doing podcasts, he said, you got to be yourself with the microphone turned all the way up. Like, you're for sure going to get people that don't like who you are and what you're all about, but you're going to have those detractors, but people aren't going to follow you unless you're actually yourself. And you're going to have a really hard time trying to people please. Like, nobody will watch your stuff if you're just trying to be people pleasy. And so I kind of embrace that for the business too, which is like, if people are coming to use our service, it's going to be because we're really freaking good at it. But if they're offended by our name and that's why they don't sign up, I don't really want them as a client. I'm not short on clients.
Right.
I can go get more clients, but I can't fake being somebody I'm not. So I'm just not going to entertain that idea. I'm just going to, and like, life is short and I'm a nerdy bookkeeper. Like, accounting and bookkeeping isn't that fun. We got to make it fun.
Yeah.
And so why not start with a fun name, you know? When I interview people too, and like I do group interviews when we're recruiting, some people just don't want to come work for us. Great. Because the people that do, like, I will get emails after I do a group interview. I had one guy that emailed and he's like, I will follow you anywhere. Like, with a bunch of F-bombs in it, which I thought was really funny because I'll swear on the interviews. Like, I'm just right in people's faces. And I'm like, if you're going to work here, this is like the last job you're ever going to have. and we're going where we're going. And so you either want to be on this bus and you're going to be the best. And if you're like an A- player, you just can't be here. You're just going to get trampled. And so if you want to come like follow me and take this bus ride with, like, come on. But if you're offended by our core values or our logo or the fact that there's a beer in it, like, go find the job that's perfect for you. Because this ain't it. Like, there's one person here that will never get fired. That's me. So if you don't like me or don't want to follow me, don't come work here. That'd be miserable. Like, you're signing up for a miserable boss. But if you think this is fun and you want to work hard and play hard, this is going to be a great fit.
What makes an elite bookkeeper?
Communication. Everything is communication. Like, so many people know accounting and the debits and the credits and how to do it. When we get clients that are coming from a different bookkeeping company, they're not coming because that person didn't know how to make a journal entry. Maybe once in a while, like somebody was a fraud and didn't actually know accounting. But whether it's tax service or bookkeeping or whatever it is, if they're switching bookkeepers, it's because they didn't get good communication and they felt in the dark and like they would just get a huge list of questions and not know what anything meant. People would be talking over their heads. So we just talk to them like they're humans, and we touch base with all of our clients every single week forever. Like, we communicate like crazy. And I think that's and I've fired a couple people where we have a workflow system and they got to check the box that they did their weekly check-in. I had a couple people check the box that didn't do the weekly check-in. And I mentioned earlier how I recruit way in advance, just gone. Like, if you don't do the communication step, like, the bookkeeping isn't hard, but letting a business owner know where they're at and what you need from them and where their business is doing, like, that's the important thing. The bookkeeping's easy.
This show has started out hot. I have interviewed people at the top of their game: sales, digital marketing, branding, social media, finances. I've taken those lessons and I've made a document. If you want the 10 ways to grow your business without having to use paid ads, click the link. I put together a high value piece. It's not just something to capture your email, which is what I'm trying to do. Build a list, because that's a smart thing to do. I'm actually delivering value. I would be hurting my reputation if I took your email and then delivered some piece of crap PDF. I'm going to give you distilled information that will be actionable and help you grow right now.
All right, I'm going to sound stupid, and that's okay for a little bit here, but I need to know where bookkeeping, like, I've heard the term so many times. I don't quite understand the difference between bookkeeping, accounting, CPA, CFO, and when and how to use one.
Yeah.
When's it appropriate? I'm a videographer. I've been in business 4 years. I haven't really used a bookkeeper. I don't know. I just do my taxes once a year. I need to be educated on, I guess, the value of a bookkeeper, what they do, how it works.
I think I probably look at it different than most bookkeepers too, because I look at it, I'm a nerdy accountant, but I've run a bunch of home service businesses, and so I look at accounting and finance as a tool for the business owner. What does the business owner need to help them make better decisions, run their business, scale it the way they want to scale it, make it more profitable? At the end of the day, like, running a business is just a big math game. It's a math game full of decisions, and you're using your numbers to make those decisions. So bookkeeping to me is, how do I get Danny the best information to make really confident decisions quickly? So, and it's always a math thing, even if it's like an employee decision, right? If you need to go hire more people, well, how much are you going to spend per applicant? How many applicants do you want to get? How many people do you need to hire to get the type of role that you want filled? Assuming usually you hire 2 to 3 people to like actually get one to stick. And it's all math, but what's the ROI, right? What's the trade-off? And bookkeeping informs all of that stuff. So to me, and probably where the confusion comes in is a lot of people say bookkeeping and they think some old lady sitting at a desk punching some numbers in and maybe sending them a report every once in a while.
Yeah.
And they kind of view it more like an accounting thing that needs to get done so they can prepare their taxes. And I'm like, hell no. Like, bookkeeping is active, it's aggressive, it's in your face, it's the thing you use to run your business. It's as important as your CRM. Like, we're pulling data from your CRM to report back to our clients. If I have to break the accounting spectrum up into 3 things, here's how I look at it. Like, in your business, you tend to have office managerial accounting stuff. That's like the first thing that happens. It's not actually accounting, but it gets grouped in with accounting, which is paying your bills, running your payroll, invoicing your clients. Like none of those things require any accounting knowledge. Usually you do those like we use Gusto for payroll. You can use your CRM to invoice your clients, whatever the case is, but it gets lumped in with accounting. It's usually an office manager role or a VA that's kind of like doing the behind the scenes administrative accounting stuff. But that person doesn't need to know anything about accounting. They're just doing simple processes. And then at the other end of the spectrum, you have the CPA stuff. You have the tax filing stuff. And it always cracks me up when I hear the words like tax strategy. It's like taxes aren't a strategy. The thing has already happened. But yeah, there's some things you can do along the year to reduce your tax strategy, but it's not like the tax law is an unknown and you're making these decisions in the unknown. Like marketing is strategic. You're making a bunch of unknown decisions trying to get the best ROI. Taxes, the law's already written. We just it's like golf. Sometimes the rules work for you and sometimes they work against you, and you want to play with the rules that work for you legally, right? And so taxes aren't a strategy. They're just that's when you count the chips. Bookkeeping informs them, but as a business owner, you need data way before you get your taxes done. You need data ongoing to run your business better. So the bookkeeping to me is like the thing in between when the tax person does their nerdy stuff at the end and when your admin person is done paying the bills and invoicing the clients. Bookkeeping is getting stuff organized correctly, categorized correctly, and then reporting it in a way that helps the business owner make the decision. So on our team, for all of our clients, we have a bookkeeper that categorizes and reconciles and makes sure the data is in there and it's good, and we know what the supplies are and what's overhead versus cost of goods sold and stuff like that. And then all of our account managers oversee that, communicate with our clients regularly, and then they run a report for them at the end of the month and actually record a video like doing financial analysis and saying, hey, Danny, here's what's working in your business. Oh, you're kind of high here. Hey, you mentioned you're going to do more marketing stuff. Here's what's happening in your marketing. And, it's a little high right now. Is it working? Like, are you seeing an ROI come from it? Or do we need to jump on a call and like work on that together? And usually at about the time it turns into like giving you mentioned CFO. I'd say that's the next level of bookkeeping is really a finance thing. It's like, hey, do you need help making those decisions, right? Here's the data. And for our account managers, I always view them as like a tour guide. I don't want them telling our clients, hey, you know what? You're spending a lot on marketing. Here's what I would do if I were you. Like, I don't want them sticking their neck out that way. But I do want them to say, hey, it looks like you're spending a lot on marketing. Are you tracking your acquisition cost? Like, do you feel like you have a good sense of your ROI? If not, here's Dan's calendar link. Grab CFO time with them. So then that's where I come in. I get to play CFO and say, well, let's break this stuff down and measure it and figure out, is this working? Is that working? Is this awareness marketing like positively impacting your Google, conversions or anything like that? And so we're trying to lead it to help make decisions. Again, it's all strategic. Like there's no right answer per se all the time, but you're in the business of decision making. And so I've seen businesses grow to $1 million just without bookkeeping, like a guy running a business with his guts. When I met with him, he wasn't profitable and he was damn near in tears because running $1 million business, just by your shirt tail is frustrating and stressful. And so being able to give him good data to feel more confident running his decisions helped him a ton. But that's the role of bookkeeping is like, how do we give you data faster so that you can make decisions faster and make them more confidently? And yeah, you can run a business with your gut, but it gets stressful trying to figure out what your bank account's telling you if you don't actually know the impacts of all the decisions, especially when you get a bunch of employees out spending your money. Then it seems to fly off the shelves even faster. So I think that's the role of bookkeeping is it's really a finance thing.
That's the best explanation I've ever heard. So thank you.
Boom.
Yeah, let's go. Best damn explanation right there.
That's right.
What are have you noticed any patterns or any easy fixes for people that aren't using bookkeepers right now that when they do, it's like, oh, these couple things fall into place right away, or it's like, oh, this is something that's typically way out of balance?
There's a pattern with all of us when we start out. I say all of us as like home service business owners. Like we tend to start out and not charge enough because we only look at how much money we need to make. And we oftentimes paint ourselves as inferior to the big guys. So like, oh man, that huge company out there, like they must be better than me. And so I can't charge what they can charge. I got to charge down here somewhere, which isn't true because a lot of times plenty of customers would rather work with us. That doesn't feel corporate, right? They want to work with the smaller guy where the customer actually gets to interact with the business owner. The bigger you get, half the time the owner isn't even in the business anymore. And so a lot of times when we start out with smaller companies, we find that what I call their cost of goods sold is too high, meaning they're not charging enough for their service. And when they do start hiring employees, they don't know how to pay them efficiently. So they just give them a big hourly rate, but they're not quite sure how to manage their productivity. And everything starts in your cost of goods sold. When I say cost of goods sold, I'm talking labor, like payroll, workers' comp, payroll taxes, supplies, tools, and equipment that are on the truck going out and doing the thing, and then the fuel to get out there, and even the merchant processing to get paid. Like that's all part of doing a job. And early on for new guys in the business, that tends to be high because they're not charging enough. And when they start hiring people, they don't have the right training systems and processes. They're trying to figure out what they actually need out of a technician. They tend to turn them over because the first couple technicians will never be as good as you are. And that's frustrating. And so you're trying to sort that stuff out. And especially like when you get 2 or 3 of them, now you get a second truck and you got to equip all that stuff. And so the supplies and the tools and equipment to like load that thing up. So that tends to be a barrier that everybody has to get over. And I call it the purgatories of scaling. That's the first purgatory, is when you start getting yourself off the truck and like replacing yourself in the field. It's super frustrating because all of a sudden those guys are making all the pay and you were, but now you're not, because now you're paying them and you actually go backwards financially. It's like you're working twice as hard. You're trying to manage these kids that you hired, and they're driving your trucks and they're doing a bad job compared to what you would do. And they're coming in late and they're smelling like booze and whatever else. And you're not making any money. And it's like a phase we all have to go through. You get better at hiring people. You get better at finding the right people. You get better at charging enough. You get better at managing the systems. And then you go through the same phase when you start hiring office help. It never goes away. There's always a phase. I call them purgatories. There's different levels that we all have to go through. The first one is the worst because it's the first time we've run into it. The next ones are all just annoying because we're like, oh, damn, I thought I was good. Now here I'm back in this shitty phase again. I didn't know I was going to enter a shitty phase again. Like $1 million is awful for so many home service businesses. Like we all want to get to $1 million. When you get there, you're like, shit. Like this sucks. And it just sucks for different reasons. But the hardest one is usually around like the 100, depending on the industry, I'll say 100 to 300,000, where you're like starting to hire the first couple guys and maybe getting some admin help. And it's just like you financially go backwards. And it's like you thought you had this business that was making you all this money. And then when you actually started to have to build the infrastructure and hire the people and train them, and there's no money left, you're like, why don't I just get back on the truck and make $100,000 doing the work myself instead of trying to hire all these people? And now I'm making $30,000 working twice as hard. And so it's a weird catalyst. Like you'll see people get back in the field and stop trying to scale, or you'll see them, usually it takes a year or two, they'll suffer through it and then come out and be like, holy shit, here we go, we made it. And then they'll kind of be like, they'll like take a breather once they get through that first one. Yeah. Then again, they'll hit the next one at like 500 to 600,000 and be like, oh shit, I thought I was done with these purgatories, but they keep coming.
I feel like I'm in my own way. I'm in that right now. Not that I'm doing those numbers, but my goal for 2025 is to really reduce my aspect of fulfillment. So when it comes to, I'm still shooting, like I need editing help because it just is such a time consuming thing. Mm-hmm. And to find the quality of editor, it's like you just have to pay a certain rate to get the quality that you want. I'm like, damn, I don't think I'm charging the client enough, but I don't know. I guess, yeah, it's like, if I increase my rate, are they going to dump me? Or do I have to go find another,
like a higher willing to pay client that will afford me to get the right editor to make them the right stuff?
For a home service company, is it just about experience and picking better employees? And like when you're like, oh crap, I made a bad hire, you just fire fast and just get the next one? Or how can somebody, one, it's really helpful to know that this is going to be a thing. So just understanding that is awesome. But how can they maneuver and go through that phase better now that they know it's on the horizon?
Honestly, I think everything in a home service business comes down to recruiting. If you get good at recruiting and you do it proactively instead of reactively, it makes your life 20 times easier. The most painful times when you're running a home service business is when your crew is not doing what you want them to do, and they're coming in late and their quality sucks and they're no showing you, and you're like, well, I can't fire them because I have nobody else that can take their spot. And we've all, if you've ever tried to hire people, like, you've been there out in the home service business. And so we end up being like held captive by our business, and that's miserable and it sucks. And it causes you to like lose faith in people. And you see it posted on Facebook all the time. Nobody wants to work anymore. All these kids suck, blah, blah, blah. Like, they just haven't figured this out yet. That you need, like, my rule when I go recruit is 500 applicants. I don't stop boosting until I hit 500 applicants. And we were talking about this a little earlier. January is actually the best time to recruit. It's the best labor market for the cheapest price. I don't care if you don't need people to April. Go build your list now. It's the most cost-effective time to like build your list of applicants, and don't stop till you hit 500. And 500 is important because you need to build a list. You don't need to recruit to hire somebody. You need to recruit to have a list of A players, and you need to know who you're going to call first. Yeah, you might hire one or two now, but it might not work out. And you need to have a backup plan and a backup plan and a backup plan. Our mantra, I own part of Hire Lead Chill Recruiting, and our mantra is ABC. Always be recruiting. Like, you don't turn your website off. You don't shut your website down when you're not like really trying to grow, right? Don't turn your recruiting off. You might change how much you're boosting, but like, never pull down. You're never going to regret finding an A player. And I have fired people before who were good employees, but I fired them because a great person came along, and I couldn't afford not to have this great person on my team. That sounds cold, but it's like, my customers deserve somebody great. We're not super average to good bookkeeping. We're best damn bookkeeping. Like, we got to have the best. And when you have really good employees, and if you've ever had a really good employee, you know what I'm talking about. Like, it changes everything. It allows you to go to sleep at night. We rarely do we lose sleep over our clients. We lose sleep over employees. Like, if you look at it in that lens, like, when you have an employee that's acting up or causing you problems, that gives you more heartburn than a customer deal that isn't working right. Like, you can go get more customers, but if you think about the value of employee, like in most of our businesses, they're worth $200,000. Like, in terms of the revenue that they touch and produce, they're oftentimes worth somewhere between 100 and 300,000. I don't have any customers that pay me that much. Like, the employee is the important thing.
Yeah.
So in all of the, like, I talked about this first level of purgatory, just, getting kind of truck number 2 going or whatever, getting yourself off the truck. It's definitely an employee thing, but every time you get stuck, it's always an employee thing. And sometimes it's us as the business owner, like, it's a skill set we haven't developed yet. And so we're the bad employee that can't get out of the way. And scaling isn't right for everybody either. Like, as I'm saying all this, you might be listening and thinking like, man, I just don't love managing people. It's a pain in my ass. It's like, well, then don't grow a team if you don't love managing people, because it's not about video editing, right? It's not about bookkeeping. It's about leadership. And if you don't like to lead people and build a team, it doesn't matter what your business is, because as the CEO, you don't do the thing. You build a team that does the thing. You build systems and processes, and you praise people and you fire people. That's your job. Like, so if you don't like to do that stuff, don't scale a business, because you're going to work yourself into a job that you hate.
Yeah.
But if you do want to scale a business and like play the game of business, getting really good people on your team is the most important thing, because it makes the rest of everything so much easier. And just don't stop until you can't find anybody better. And also to what you were saying before is like, don't be afraid to charge what you need to charge to afford you to go get the best people. And that's where a lot of us, when we first start a business, we don't charge enough, not only to afford to go get the best people, but as you grow a business, you have additional costs besides just delivering the service, right? You have insurance and rent and employee engagement and recruiting expenses to go get them. And you want to go to conventions and meet people and whatever. Like, running a business is expensive. Usually only half of our costs go towards delivering the service. The other half of our costs are all the administrative people, the infrastructure, the overhead to actually marketing to go get more clients. And we got to make sure we charge enough to be able to afford all that stuff too.
How does somebody build a list of 500 and then parse through it to sort and filter and actually make that a usable list. But one, like, what's the playbook? How does somebody build a list of 500?
So number one is always got to treat recruiting like marketing. It's a sex appeal thing, right? You're going and getting leads. They're just applicants instead of clients. And so your job ad has to be sexy. It can't be, well, you don't get to work here if you don't do this and don't do that. And like, if it sounds negative, people aren't going to click on it, right? It's got to be fun. It's got to be sexy. It's got to be goofy. You don't want to oversell, right? You don't want to make promises you can't keep, but you got to be yourself and build your culture through that job ad. It's an ad. It's not a job description. Like, don't go post a job description. You want to get clicks. You want to get as many clicks as possible. Some of it is knowing the labor market. And that's where I said, like, January is the best. It's January and February. People are looking and not that many people are hiring. So, like, go get them.
Craigslist, Facebook, or Indeed?
Unfortunately, like, Indeed is probably still the best, where if you're hiring technicians, I'll say it tends to be Indeed. Different parts of the country are different, though. Just like marketing. Some things, like Yelp, works in California. I don't know. Doesn't work here, but it works in California, right? And recruiting can be the same. I tend to, if we're talking like technicians in the home service space, Indeed, just always. Sometimes it's going to be better. Sometimes it's going to be worse, but we always have stuff going on Indeed. Craigslist, surprisingly, will disappear as a good source for a year or two sometimes. And then all of a sudden we'll get like 3 really good employees from it. So it's kind of one of those things where it's like, I'm a fisherman, so I do a lot of fishing analogies. There's spots that you always go to, and there's a lot of spots where randomly there's some good fish in it, and you might as well have a line in there too. And it's not that expensive. Again, like, this person's going to bring you hundreds of thousands of dollars. So like, you can afford to spend some money to go get them. I see people get really cheap on it. One year we spent $32,000 on Indeed ads in our window cleaning business. This is the best money we ever spent. We grew $400,000 that year. Like, it was good ROI. We didn't keep all those. We hired a bunch of people. We didn't keep them all, but the ROI on that spend was amazing. And we've continued to grow more and more and more from that. So, like, don't skimp on the most important part of your business. Both important because you want to deliver a good service, but important because you want to sleep at night. And like, if you get good employees, your marriage is better. You as a parent are better. Your employees are happier because they don't have to work with a bunch of shitheads. But back to your question of like the process. So, good job ad. But just like you have a CRM when you do your client stuff, you need a CRM for your employee side too. We built ours. So again, I own part of Hire Lead Chill. So ours is built in Go High Level. We have a system where it feeds in from wherever the sources are, whether it's Facebook, Indeed, ZipRecruiter, Craigslist, whatever it is. Like, don't try to go through 500 resumes. Don't. You're going to suck. B, you're going to be miserable. And C, you're never going to get through 500 applicants. So you need some sort of screening thing to automate it. Like, in order to do 500, a human's not going to do it. So we use a scoring system, and it's very specific to the types of roles that we're trying to hire for. And we're literally filtering for one thing with our questions, which is, how long are they going to stay with your company? Because if they're going to stay with your company, like, if we have data that says they stay with you for a long time, that usually means they're doing a good job and you like them and they like you. And so if we can filter to that, right, and ask questions that get to that, that's the goal. So we have a scoring system, and we knock out a bunch of people that come in below the scoring system. And there's some like binary questions where if they answer wrong, they're out. And then there's some more open-ended ones that get scored. The big thing for me, and like, Hire Lead Chill isn't the only company out there. There's other companies out there that can do scoring systems like that. But the big thing is you got to get 500 and maybe weed that down to 50 to 100 people. And then I like to do group interviews. So I count on the recruiting system to like knock out a bunch of people and then set me up with interviews. But I'm not going to interview 50 people. That also sounds miserable. I like to do group interviews for a couple reasons. One is, no-shows are so prevalent. Like, you can do some things to reduce the amount of no-shows, but complaining about them isn't going to help. It's going to happen. It's the world we live in. Like, if you think about how these kids are applying to jobs, they click on 20 job ads in like 2 seconds. And you can find that out really quick, because if you call them and they answer and say, hey, this is me, I'm calling from Best Damn Bookkeeping, just checking to see if you're coming to the interview today, they're going to be like, who? From where? They don't remember you or your job ad. They're going to no-show. They're just clicking on too many things, right? So it is important to have a sexy job ad, so hopefully they remember you. But then I do group interviews, so I'm not sitting around waiting for people. And I don't, because I filtered them already, I don't even interview them. Like, I kind of flip it on its head back to the whole marketing analogy is I give them a sales presentation. And I don't tell them I'm trying to sell them. I'm really actually trying to sell them on not working for me. Like I said, I'm swearing in there. I'm like going hard at it, and I'll spend 45 minutes presenting our business. And I tell them all the stuff that sucks because I need them to sign up for the stuff that sucks. Like that's what's going to cause them to not stick with me someday. Is the sucky stuff. So I want to make sure they choose that. And I don't choose them. They choose me. And it gives, and I'll talk through that in a second here, but it gives them accountability on the job that like they chose this job. Dan didn't hire them. They chose Best Damn Bookkeeping. And it totally flips it around that it's like, it's their job, right? It's not like, oh, Dan hired me. No, the onus is on them. They got married to me. I just made myself available. So when I do the group interview, there's a few things that I have found that are really important to weed out in that interview who's going to love working for me. One is I'm like the most extreme version of myself because like I want them to be thrilled to come to work for me, not annoyed to come to work for me. So I want to push out the people that aren't going to like Dan. Like, again, if you're going to work here, there's one person that's not going to get fired. It's me. So you better like working for me. And I'm goofy and I drink beer and talk smart. And so if you don't like that, this isn't a good spot for you. But I try to use a lot of storytelling because stories tell you, just like we're doing right now, like when somebody's engaged in a conversation with you, they tell you who's digging your shit. If you start telling people stories and they're like looking around and disinterested, they don't want to follow you. They don't want your stories. They don't like your stories. If they're sitting forward, nodding their head, trying to tell you a story back, a lot of times, like the people that are really engaged will be like, "Oh my God, that happened to me one time." They're bleeding your blood. Like they will follow you. They want to follow you. So I start with like an origin story of, hey, here's how we got here. Here's why we do it the way that we do it. I go through our core values and I tell them stories about our core values. My favorite one, we had Tony who worked for us in our window cleaning business. And he complained about everything every day. Like one day he complained about his jobs being too far away. The next day he complained about his jobs being too close together. Like he just couldn't make it up. He would just find something to bitch about. And he was good at his job. Like he cleaned windows really well and he showed up early every day. It was hard to fire him because I was like, I don't know why I need to fire this guy, but he makes us all miserable. Like he's just bitching all the time. Finally, thank God he was at one of our customers' house and she called me. He broke her screen over his knee and threw it in the woods. He didn't realize she saw him, but she saw him and called me. There's a whole long story, but I tell that story and then I say, and therefore like our core value became positive attitude. Like you just can't work here if you're shitty. I don't want you here. And none of us want you here.
That's powerful.
Right. And so we tell stories and people are like, oh my God, I used to work with a guy that was he just complained all the time. It's like, yeah, don't work here if you're not going to be happy and have a good attitude. Like life is too short. And so our core values are all like these funny things that have happened to us over time. In this business, our core values are BEST, because it's got to be the acronym because otherwise you forget them. So ours is BEST, and the B stands for blessed, which is you got to be thankful, you got to be positive, you got to be upbeat and vibing. Like I picture I'm like a Labrador wagging my tail, right? Like I'm just around doing stuff. It's like, I just don't want to work with a bunch of deadbeats that are like boring and lame. Like I want to work with people that are pumped to be here and Labradors wagging their tail and excited. And that's not everybody. And if it's not you, cool. Just don't work here. Like there's plenty of places you can go work. So I go through all of our core values and tell stories. And I truly say this like before I do it. And I think this is probably one of the most important parts is I say, hey, I'm going to go through our core values here. And if your reaction to these is, cool, Dan, that's neat, do not work here. Like I'm telling you now, if these are okay, if these are neato, if these are fine and dandy, don't work here. Your reaction has to be, fuck yeah. And I say that, and I'm like, if your reaction is not at the fuck yeah level, there's a better job for you. You need to go find the set of core values that make you say fuck yeah. And that's where you need to go work. If this is that place, cool. I want this to be the last job you ever have. But if this isn't that place, that's fine. Like, I won't be offended if you don't want to come work here. I want to make sure that if you opt in, you are all in because we're going places and I need you along with me and we're going to have a lot of fun doing it, but I can't have you not living up to these core values. And if these aren't your core values, and if they're just neat, then don't come here. Right. And I'm not going to hire you. You're going to opt in here. So I need you to choose if this is the right set of core values for you. And so I go through all the things that are good, all the things that are bad, our types of clients, all the like the day in the life, the how they get paid and everything. And at the end of the interview, I say, all right, like next step is yours. Did you ever see the movie Hitch with Will Smith in it? Where they're like dancing. He's like, you got to come the other 10%.
Yeah,
You got to
90,
come.
10.
Yeah. I'm like, I went to 90. You got to come the 10. And so I put the onus on them. You got to send me an email. Like, you got 20 different ways you can get a hold of me. But if you want this job and you want to be part of this team someday, you got to come the other 10%. I'm not going to chase you around. Like, if you want to be here, you want to be here. Send me a note. We'll do a second like follow-up interview where I'll ask you a bunch of questions and dig into your resume and whatever and see if we vibe. And then if it's a good fit, I'll put you on my list that just keeps getting longer. But what I'm really trying to figure out is who am I going to call first, right? Like, who do I think really wants to be here the most? And based on their history and experience and everything else they bring to the table, who's going to be the best fit to do the best job for our clients and be the best coworker for the rest of our team. And that's who I'm going to call. But if that list gets below 10, I'm getting more applicants. Like, I always try to keep a list of 10. And even our last Ashley, who just joined with us, I think I interviewed her 8 months ago, and she started like a month ago. So it's always surprising to me if they're the right fit, and if you're the right fit, you don't need to hire them right now, right? I said earlier, like, recruiting and hiring are two different things. You can recruit now in January, even if you don't need people till April. If you are the right fit and they're pumped to come work for you, they'll leave whatever they have then. Or maybe they're already at a job now and they'll stay there until you say, hey, now's the time, come on board. Like, it works out almost every freaking time. And if it doesn't work out this year, it might work out in 2 years. That's fine. I'm still going to be here doing this thing. So always ABC, always be recruiting. So I do that group interview, and then I use our high level system to kind of flag who's in and who's out. And not everybody gets to come along, right? There's people, like, for me, I run a virtual bookkeeping business. If they're not on camera, they're out. Like, we got to be on camera. It's the one, like, a little chance of FaceTime we get with our clients.
Right.
Or if they just have a grouchy face the entire time, they're out.
Yeah.
I can't have that. I don't want to look at that. I know our clients don't want to look at that, right? It's the same like when a customer service person answers the phone, do they sound happy or pissed off to be there? It totally changes your experience as a customer. So I got to make sure all my account managers and bookkeepers sound happy and look happy. So I'm like filtering as I go. But the group interview thing too does a neat thing where they forget they're being interviewed, and it's actually probably tells you more about them than if you ask them a bunch of questions. Because when you do a one-on-one interview with somebody, all you get is, are they good at interviewing?
Right.
And they tell you what you want to hear. And I've hired so many people that sucked because they were good at interviewing when I did one-on-one interviews. But this way, they totally put their guard down. When you do a group interview, they forget they're being interviewed. And so, like, if they're slouching or doing this stuff or whatever, it's like what you're really filtering for most of us in all the jobs we're hiring for, they're very teachable jobs. Like, we don't need to hire somebody that's good at window cleaning or good at pressure washing or good at cleaning a house. I can teach anybody to do it the way we want to do it. Even bookkeeping. I can teach anybody to do bookkeeping. Can't teach them how to have a good attitude. Can't teach them how to be interested in our story and what we got going on or how to follow us. They got to want to do that. And so we're just filtering for who's pumped, who wants to come on board. And then we'll get into what their experiences are. And if we think we can teach them, but 90% of the time we can teach them what we want them to know. We just need to filter for people that want to be here and have a good attitude.
Thanks for sharing all that. That's incredibly helpful.
Hashtag bookkeeping.
That's insane. It's really, I'm like, wow, you're not getting this anywhere else. What I'm curious though is, okay, is that system, is that different for, I would say bookkeeping is probably, you need a little bit more education than a window washer, right?
Yeah.
Does this, I assume it's going to change and look different based on the level of education or skill required?
I have found it to not matter that much. The nonverbals you're looking for, or like how you talk to the person, might be a little bit different. And you're, as the interviewer, you're just trying to set really good expectations of what's going to suck and what's going to be awesome. And so that changes if you're talking to a window cleaner versus a bookkeeper of what sucks and what's going to be awesome. But it doesn't change your process of you want to talk about what sucks and what's going to be awesome, and how you talk about your core values and the stories you tell that group interview process doesn't really change. We do it in person for our window cleaning business. It works great. I do it digitally for a bookkeeping business. Works great.
Okay.
I got to do it on a video, obviously, because I'm not going to have people like fly in for a group interview. I will say, as you get higher up your leadership levels, obviously you need to scrutinize more. And so I'm not going to go hire like a GM via a group interview. Generally, those positions, I'm already going to have somebody internally that I want, because I'm hiring people that want to grow with the business and want those types of roles. So I feel like every day, and I didn't mention this part. This is another really important part of like building a list. And I think it also goes along with how you treat your team every day, which is they're interviewing every day, right? Every day is a day they could get fired. And they can get fired way more easily if you have a list of people. Sean, who runs Hire Lead Chill, his analogy is perfect for this, which is if you're on a basketball team and you're a starter on the team and there's nobody on the bench, how hard are you going to practice? Right? How hard are you going to play? When there's 10 super hungry people over there ready to like take your starting spot, you're going to practice way harder. You're going to like do whatever the hell the coach says. And your team is no different. Not that you should like hold that over their head, but they need to know that just like you do, you need to perform every day as a business owner. Like, even if I'm in a shitty mood, I have to come in with a positive attitude. Like, that is my job. I got to bring the culture every single day. And if I don't, they're going to leave me, right? And so they need to bring it every single day too. They need to do a good job for our clients. They're not going to have their best day every day, but 9 out of 10 days, they better be kicking ass, right? And so if they don't and they can't live up to that, they got to go. And for all of their coworkers' sakes, I need to be able to let them go, right? If they start having bad behaviors, if they become a Tony and they're complaining about driving across town one day and then having 2 jobs next to each other the next day, they got to go. I deserve it to the rest of our team to let them go. It's my job as a business owner to just make sure I can replace them. And so back to your question about like, do I find that it's different for different roles? Not really. It works for office people. It works for technicians. It's really, if you're getting up to like leadership levels, that you're probably doing more like headhunting style recruiting, but anything where you're just posting a job out there and trying to recruit it out in the world, I think that group interview approach works phenomenal.
Damn. Thanks for sharing that. I felt like that was a detour, but high value detour. So
yeah,
thank you.
Well, and I tell people this all the time on my demo calls. Like when I'm talking about bookkeeping to a client, one of my questions is, for instance, what's your CRM? And if they say, I don't have a CRM, I say, I think we'll do the rest of this demo, but I would recommend before you hire me that you go get a CRM. Like, you should not run a home service business without a CRM. You can pick whichever one you like the most. I'll tell you which one I like the most and why, but that will serve you better. That'll help you run the business. And then I can help you with the bookkeeping once you're actually good at running the business. And I'd say the same about recruiting. Like, yeah, I can keep your books for you, but if you can't hire and keep people and you're constantly turning people over, I'd probably work on that first. Like, the data is always going to suck if you have shitty employees. I don't care how good of bookkeeping I do. I'm just going to keep telling you that your business sucks. Like, you need to go get good employees to make your life better, to make your business better, and then I'll have better news for you. But if your employees suck and you suck at recruiting, your business is just going to suck. Like, that's it. Yeah. It's super easy.
Oh, man. Yeah, I love listening to you. I love how confident in your conviction. I feel like I want to talk about some finance systems and get into some more practical things. But where does this experience, what is your experience? You've mentioned a couple of times you have a background in building business, because you talk more like a business owner that has a lot of experience rather than just a bookkeeper kind of.
Yeah, I'm a weird bookkeeper. Like I said, I come at bookkeeping more as a business owner. So I actually was in the corporate world for like a decade. I did a little bit of accounting, and then I was like, oh man, I am not a normal accountant. And when you're in the corporate world, they want you to like follow rules and grow stuff like that. So I ended up getting into finance and risk management. I worked at Cargill in town here, and I called it slinging chicken feed. I was trading corn and soybean meal commodities for like clients were McDonald's, Denny's, IHOP. Super fun job. But then I knew I was going to leave and do this entrepreneurial thing. And my buddy Mike Dahlke had just bought a window cleaning business, and I was like helping him do his books. And so he and I and a couple other guys ended up partnering on those businesses. And like, it was actually a funny, like, hindsight thing. When I first started, I was just like moonlighting for those guys. They had the window cleaning business, and I was like, well, this is fun. How can I help? And they're like, hey, can you, like, you're an accounting nerd. Can you, like, do our QuickBooks and stuff for us? Like, we don't want to really do that. And so Mike and I don't know what our wives thought we were doing, but like every Tuesday night we'd be at Caribou Coffee, sitting on spreadsheets and QuickBooks, like designing the business model. And so, like, that's my jam, just working on business model stuff. But again, it's all math, it's all number stuff. And I dig the numbers. So he and I spent a lot of time like building it out, and then we bought more businesses together. And so at one point, I think we had 7 different businesses, like 10 different divisions, and 100 employees around the country. Damn. And so we had to get good at bookkeeping, because I hadn't figured out how to do the leadership part yet. So I had to tell how much money we were losing and where we were losing it, which is also how we got good at recruiting, because we had to hire people in all these locations around the country. And I sucked at the leadership. I couldn't figure out how to lead these businesses to save my life. So, but at least we could replace the employees that left. So we got good at recruiting and good at bookkeeping to keep track of it all. And then after a while, I realized, like, this is how a lot of businesses start. Ryan Edrington was my buddy, and one of my partners was actually investing in his business. And they looked at his business and they're like, dude, your books are so jacked up. And he was paying a bookkeeper at the time. They're like, man, his books are so jacked up. And they came back to me and they're like, Dan, do you think you can fix his QuickBooks? And I was like, yeah, I guess, like, I'm running this other business, but yeah, let me in there. I'll spend some nights and weekends like working on it and getting it fixed up. And Ryan, I need this and need that. So I fixed it up. And then the old, like, no good deed goes unpunished. Then he was like, well, can you just keep doing it? I was like, I guess. Well, what's it going to cost? Like, I don't know. I'm from Wisconsin. Like, a couple cases of beer probably is the right, how we do this. But so that was how I ended up getting back into doing bookkeeping. Like, I kind of started doing it for Mike when we had all the businesses, stopped doing it, and then tripped back into it. And over time, that turned into 300 plus clients bookkeeping wise that we had. And that was when I kind of realized, like, oh, shoot. Like, I built a business where I don't own it. Like, I had partners in it, but it was just my jam. And so that was like a year and a half ago. We ended up exiting me so I could start my own business and just do it all myself.
Oh, you had a different bookkeeping.
Had a different bookkeeping business, but we built it. And like, this was no fault of anybody. It was a fault of mine. We built it along with window cleaning and pressure washing, and we had the recruiting business in it. So we just had all this stuff jumbled together. And I mean, I love the building of businesses, and I've cleaned windows and I've pressure washed, and I started a maid service business from scratch. I was out scrubbing toilets. I'm not the best in the world at that. Like, I feel really good about being the best in the world at bookkeeping, and I love it. And talking on podcasts and talking to business owners, you'll have me all day if you keep asking me questions. Like, it's my favorite thing to do. And yeah, I can go clean some houses and I can go clean some windows. I'm just not the best in the world at it. And so it became clear running those businesses. I think after a while we were like, our strategy kind of sucks having all these businesses across the country and employees trying to lead. And I remember when I had enough, and I was like, man, we got to like exit these businesses. I had multiple conventions in a row, like out promoting bookkeeping and recruiting that we were now doing for the market and doing for everybody else. We still had all of our other cleaning companies too. And so I'm trying to like lead all those businesses and grow this new business. And I was on the road 2 weeks in a row. And then the 1 week I was supposed to be home, it was my 4-year-old's birthday, but then the general manager quit in our St. Louis location. And so I had to miss my 4-year-old's birthday to like go down there. And I was like, oh shit. Like, I'm that dad that's always working, never home, missing kids' birthdays. And I was like, I'm out. We're selling these things. And my partners all agreed. Yeah. But then it turned into, I'm running a bookkeeping business that I own like a sliver of, but it's kind of my jam. And so that was where I was like, we got to get me out of here so I can.
That makes sense.
So I can fly.
Has the podcast helped with getting clients, or what's your motivation with your podcast you run?
So when it started, we were going to talk about this. Yeah. When it started, it was still when I was doing my old bookkeeping business, but Bobby and I and our buddy Josh Gray were coming back from an ice fishing trip, and we just said, hey, it'd be kind of fun. I take that back. We had the idea on a rooftop in Nashville, having a few beers, that I should make some bookkeeping content and try to make it not super boring. And so I did, but it was awkward, and it was just like selfie on a phone of like, hey, here's a bookkeeping thing to know. So I was trying to give like tips, right? And there's only so many tips you can give before you just feel like you're saying the same shit over and over again. Yeah. And so then we were ice fishing together a few months later, and we're talking about the show. And then it kind of turned into like, hey, I'd have a guest on the show. And then we thought it'd be really cool to have a guest on who's a bookkeeping client of mine and like go through their books. And not every client is willing to do that, but Josh was a client and he was willing to do it. So we started creating video content like that of like, let's go through a pressure washing business and talk about the P&L.
Yeah.
And give Josh a hard time basically for what's working and what's not working. And so that turned into a guest style show, right? Where I'd be interviewing somebody, and then it got outside of the bookkeeping world altogether, and we'd just be talking about business. And then eventually I was like having hunting personalities on and guys like that.
Nice.
And so just like anything, like it evolves as your skill as a host evolves.
Yeah.
And I find now, I don't know if you run into this too, like when I listen to a podcast, like I'm interested in the content. I listen to a lot of hunting and fishing podcasts because I'm a total redneck, but I'm really listening for like hosting. Like how do they host? How do they ask questions? When do they give the guest like extra time versus when do they cut them off? And so it's just like you just nerd out on it, right? Like how to be the best podcast host. And so as I eventually, when I left that other business, like I couldn't bring the podcast with because the business owned it. They wanted to sell it to me, and I thought it was really weird to buy my own podcast. So I was like, I'll just start a new one. And so I started Home Service Happy Hour because I did find, even on Bookkeeping, Beer, and BS, which was my old one, eventually we just never talked about bookkeeping. We talk about business stuff, but my real, like where it wanted to take itself, not necessarily my intention, but where it naturally goes is just two business owners sitting around having a beer talking to each other.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's the Joe Rogan experience in the business world of, yeah, we're just sitting here BSing about whatever you like to talk about and what I like to talk about. And it'll probably be some business stuff, and it'll probably go 12 different directions, wildly open-ended, and we'll see where we end up. And so that's the new podcast, the Home Service Happy Hours. It's business related, it's home service related. But I come in and I tell our guests, like, I have no scripted questions. We're just going to go wherever it goes. And if we talk about some business stuff, cool. And we do ours live. And so there's questions getting asked and whatever. And we'll dig into those, and if we're here for an hour or 3 hours, whatever, like, let me know when you need to pee. Like we'll get off when somebody needs to pee. So
I like that, man. I want to hear more about your story, but I think maybe that might be a part 2, just for some more tactical for the owner operator. You had mentioned finance systems earlier. What kind of systems? Because I mean, that's what business is. It's systems and operations or whatever.
Yeah.
What kind of systems should somebody start thinking about, or what could they implement here in the new year?
So I mentioned earlier, but I think number one is like right away, get a CRM. Mm-hmm. And you don't have to pick the right one, but changing CRM sucks. So don't pick a good one that you're not gonna have to change for a while.
Suggestion?
I like, I'm biased because I'm sponsored by Service Monster, but I like Service Monster, and I turned down other CRMs that wanted to pay me more money to sponsor my show because I don't like them. And it's not about the money for me, but like we use Service Monster in our Minneapolis business, and it's not bulletproof. And I'll be the first one to say, like, the CRM you pick is so dependent on you and your processes and how your brain works. None of them are going to fit your business perfectly. So it's really like which one is closest and which one can you amend your processes to fit how they have their thing built. But a good CRM will even financially like take you a long way. You don't need bookkeeping really until you're like hiring your first couple employees. You can get your taxes done with bank statements and some receipts. I think bookkeeping comes in when you're doing 100 to 200,000 and you start thinking about hiring employees. And now money's going to start going out the door for different things faster, in the ratios of like certain expenses to your revenue, and trying to keep those in check as you scale a business get more and more important. And if you screw something up by a percentage when you're doing $100,000 and you lose $1,000, it's not life-changing money. But if you're doing $1 million and you screw something up by a percentage, well, that's 10 grand. And now your wife's mad at you because you lost 10 grand. And so just like you get those percentages stay the same, but they get way more meaningful. And so as the business gets bigger, having good bookkeeping helps you stay on top of those things. So but first is a good CRM. Second is QuickBooks Online. And QuickBooks, I've looked at a bunch of different bookkeeping softwares. I don't love using the biggest thing out there, but there's a reason why 99.9% of people use QuickBooks Online. It's just built perfectly for what we do. One nugget that I always love to share is if you have a CRM, it probably says, hey, why don't you hook this thing up to QuickBooks? And you're like, of course, why wouldn't I want to do that? I would warn you against it. It's like one of the worst things you can do to jack up your QuickBooks. And if you're out there and you're listening, you've done it before, you're probably nodding your head. It duplicates all your sales. Now, QuickBooks is built to handle it, but most of us as business owners aren't built to handle that level of QuickBooks. And like, you don't need to have the same data in two different places. Like, all your customer data and who owes you money and what you bill them for and all that is already in your CRM. It doesn't do anything for you to have in QuickBooks. QuickBooks is cash basis accounting, meaning how much money you got in your bank account, what went out on the credit card, just when the money moves. The IRS doesn't give a shit about what job you did for Mrs. Jones and how much you billed her, only when the money went in the bank account. So QuickBooks should just be bank accounts and credit cards, not your CRM hooked up to it. You don't need that data in there twice, because it's going to come in when you deposit Mrs. Jones's check. You don't want to also have the invoice and the payment record from Mrs. Jones. That'll confuse QuickBooks, and it'll confuse you when you have to deal with it and trying to match all the data up. So that's a lesson I see a lot of people learn the hard way, is they sync it up and then it creates a huge mess, and then they got to pay a nerd like me to fix it all. So if you can alleviate that and just resist the temptation to put your QuickBooks username and password into your CRM, it'll just save you a lot of time and heartache. And they're just two different languages. Your CRM is accrual basis and your QuickBooks is cash basis. They're two different languages for a reason. Like, you don't need to smash them together. It just creates nonsense for you.
Yeah.
One of the other things that I tend to find, and this is like as you scale the business, there's always a weird like pride thing, especially with dudes. Dudes have this issue, and we can talk about the tax issue that dudes have too, of trying to spend all their money so that they don't pay the IRS any. But another dude issue that we have is we feel like it's macho to pay for stuff in full in cash. Like, oh, I bought that thing cash, right? What's the dumbest thing we can do? Like, the truck we have or the trailer we have or whatever that piece of equipment is doesn't make any money. The dude running it does, and the customer does, but nobody comes and works for you because of your truck, and no customer hires you because of your truck. I shouldn't say zero. It's not that binary, but like, the truck and the equipment is only as good as the person using it. The recruiting and the marketing are what grow your business. You need really good employees and really good customers. You can have the worst set of equipment and the shittiest truck, but if you have an awesome employee, they'll crush it. You can have the best truck and the best equipment. If you have a shitty employee, there's still going to be a shitty employee, and your customers are going to be pissed.
Yeah.
And so don't buy all your stuff cash. Save, finance it intelligently. We always put like 30% down. We don't want to buy shit we can't afford, but we need to save most of our money to spend on recruiting, to get really good employees to use that equipment, and marketing to get really good customers to send that really good employee out to. Those are the two things that grow our business. The equipment we can get whenever. Granted, COVID, it was a little tricky to like get the equipment you needed, but always spend your money on the employees and the customers. The equipment's easy. You just get that as you need it, but don't go spending all your cash on it. Save your cash to go to spend on things that actually give you an ROI, like employees and customers. Yeah. There's nothing macho about paying something with cash. That's just dumb. That's just stupid.
Even when interest rates are higher?
Yeah. If you're borrowing money on a credit card, don't do that. Like, our businesses make about a 20% return, so don't go sign up for a credit card and put a bunch of money on it that charges you 20% interest. But if you can get single-digit rates to go finance something, then I'm going to finance it every time, because it's going to make me more money to go grow the business with. Like, if I know I can go grow the business at a 20% ROI, of course I'll go borrow money at 10% to go hit 20%.
Yeah,
like, that math works out every time.
Yeah.
It's never that easy. Like, it's easy to say. It's never, you don't know your 20% return. You might be better, you might be worse based on how well you run the business. But generally, we know what our interest rate is. I will say, always be really skeptical of equipment financing. Like, vehicle financing, it's pretty cut and dry. You get the rate that the bank says, and if it's 6 or 8 or 10%, I don't see a lot of people get hosed on that. I see a ton of people get hosed on loans from their CRM or Stripe or QuickBooks loans. They don't actually tell you the real interest rate, and most people don't go calculate it. And I see people get really hosed on equipment loans, like over and over and over again, where they think they're getting like a loan in the teens, and I'll go calculate it. And I've seen loans as high as 60% interest.
How is that legal?
They declare the interest rate. Like, it shouldn't be. I don't know how they get away with it, but they'll declare an interest rate, but they won't declare the fees that they charged up front as interest, right? They're gonna like leave stuff out of what the interest is, and the interest might, like, a common one is, oh, you got to pay this back in 3 months. Well, like, interest rates are always expressed annually, right? So if you pay something back in 3 months and it's at a 10% rate, that's really 40% interest. Like, that's the annual percentage rate. But they'll tell you it's a 10% rate. But if you got to pay it back in 3 months, it's not a 10% rate, because when you look at your ROI or your return on your business, you don't look at it in terms of 3 months. You look at it in terms of a year.
Right.
Like, everything is based on a year. And so I've seen people get hosed on that, where it's like the amount of interest they're paying in that short a time period is really equivalent to like a 40% rate. It's just explained in 10% per quarter instead of 40% per year. So they think they're getting a 10% rate when really they're paying a 40% rate.
They got 100 other things on their mind, and they just don't read the fine print.
Yep.
Yeah, it's per quarter.
And it's, a lot of times, I don't know why it's legal, but a lot of times it's not even in the fine print. Like, it's just out there. And I've had clients where I'm like, hey, if you are borrowing money, like, I just tell them, send me the loan document and I'll help you calculate what the actual interest rate is that you're paying. And then you can decide, right? But I wouldn't take the lender's word for it all the time.
I feel like you're a wealth of knowledge, and I feel like there's questions I should be asking you that I'm not quite asking to unlock more of what you know. But I mean, those simple, just the interest rate tips right there. I mean, that's saving people a bunch of money right there. Just listen to that. Were there any more before I took the break? Were there any other systems that people should think about, or any other that you had on your mind?
There's 2 other ones, and we'll see if we can get both of them here. But as you hit, I'll say, like 50,000 of net income, you for sure want to change your tax status to be taxed as a S corp. There's 2 reasons why. Number one is payroll taxes. When you're taxed as a LLC sole prop, you pay payroll taxes on every dollar of net income, and you pay both sides of the payroll taxes. You pay 7.5 as the employer and 7.5 as the employee. So it's about 15% payroll taxes you're paying. So on $50,000, you're paying $7,500 in payroll taxes before you even pay income taxes. When you're taxed as an S corp, you legally need to put yourself on payroll, take a reasonable wage, and now your payroll taxes are limited to that wage. And so if in that $50,000 example, let's say you took $30,000 as a wage, well, now you only have to pay 15% payroll taxes on that $30,000. So it saves you 15% of $20,000, which is $3,000, like real money back in your pocket. The flip side of that is, well, now you got to have a payroll system set up, and now you have another tax return to file. But assuming you're going to continue to grow your business, like, the savings from being taxed as an S corp are huge. And it's not like a loophole. Like, you're getting double taxed when you're a small business owner. And so it's the government's way of, like, giving you a little bit of an out so you don't get double taxed on all of your net income. So you can reduce it by just taking a wage and only paying payroll taxes on that. So for sure,
Smart.
If you haven't changed your tax status to be taxed as an S corp and you're profitable and you think you can keep increasing your profit, I think cross that bridge sooner rather than later. Because the second reason I like it is, when you are taxed as a sole prop, you're an LLC sole prop, you're not on the P&L. Like, you look free to the business. When you take money out of the business, it's a distribution. It's like if you owned Amazon stock and they sent you a dividend check, you don't work there. You don't get a paycheck. You just get a dividend check. That's how you're taking money if you're an LLC sole prop. And that's fine, and that's the right way to pay yourself. But now your true cost is not reflected in the business. And it gets hard to scale when you don't see the most important employee in the business and they look free. Because then when you go to hire somebody else, I'm pretty good at recruiting, but I still haven't recruited. I take that back. I've gotten my mom to do some free work for me before, so I have recruited free help before. But most people other than your mom won't work for free, and you shouldn't either. And so it's nice to be taxed as an S corp, because then you take a wage, your cost is reflected on your P&L. So when you're doing your analysis, or when a nerdy bookkeeper is doing your analysis, like, it helps you scale the business and see what it costs to hire the person that's doing your job, which is you. And someday, hopefully, you get to hire somebody else and fire yourself from it, but you're going to need to pay them. So you should probably pay yourself while you're the one doing the job too.
Yeah.
So it just helps you scale smarter when you actually take a wage and can see what you cost the business.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, I use my business bank account basically as my second personal checking account for a long time. I was like,
yeah. It's
Exactly.
easy to do. It's just easy to do.
It's hard to hire and hard to know what your actual profit margin is. But
Yeah.
okay, let's see. We got maybe 10 minutes left. Do we have time for one more?
Yeah.
Maybe a question after that.
Yeah.
Okay.
My other thing, and this is funny for tax time because we're recording this and it's already after you would have been able to do this. But I see a lot of business owners try to buy shit right at the end of the year to reduce their tax liability, and that's fine. Like it'll reduce your tax liability, but it doesn't reduce it as much as you think. And if it was something you were going to buy the next year, you're just moving the tax savings forward by a year. And you create this vicious cycle of having to like chase these tax savings every year. And it's the same as if you go shopping and you buy a bunch of shit that's on sale, you still are broke.
Right.
Like you're just going broke saving money.
Right.
And so spending a bunch of money to save on taxes still makes you broke. Yeah, you didn't have to pay the government, but you don't have the money either. And I've seen, like, I have a buddy that did that last year. He was like, I got to alleviate my taxes. By March, he was like, oh no. He's like, I'm never doing that again. That was the most miserable. I was so close to like bankruptcy. And I'm just like, yeah, man, it sucks. Like you thought you were doing the right thing. And yeah, you saved a few bucks on taxes, but like almost went out of business. And it's just never, here's like a good example. Let's say you buy a $10,000 piece of equipment. And so you're going to get this depreciation at the end of the year. You spent $10,000. Again, like you're still out $10,000. Maybe you financed it and so you can push some back. But if you spend $10,000, it's not like you save $10,000 in taxes. Your income tax is probably 15 to 20%. So you really saved $1,500 or $2,000. Well, if you were just going to buy it in January instead, you're going to get the tax savings a year later. And so you didn't really save $2,000. You just saved $2,000 a year earlier. And so this is just me being a finance nerd, but the value of that $2,000 isn't the $2,000 itself. It's the value of if you reinvest it. What's your return rate if you reinvest it? In our businesses, if you put that $2,000 into marketing, generally a good return for us is a 20% return. Like not revenue, not 20% revenue, like 20% real ROI, not what marketing people try to tell you ROI is. No offense, no offense, but like a real return on investment of 20%. Well, 20% of $2,000 is like a few $100. So like, and that's assuming you invested it and it actually generated a 20% return. If you put it in the stock market, that's an 8% return, right? So you got what, $160, yippity doo. Right. And you spent $10,000 to get $160 value. Like it's just not that lucrative to spend money at the end of the year to alleviate taxes. Now, if you know you're going to buy it next year anyway, sure, go ahead and spend it. Like, why not save it now? It's better to save it now than to save it later. Or if you think taxes are going to go up, like maybe you save it to save money on higher tax rates in the future. Like if you think your tax rate's going to be higher next year, like it'd be more valuable to save the money next year than it would to save it this year. Vice versa if your tax rate's going down. But in general, I think people get like way too aggressive on that to try to alleviate paying taxes and they go broke saving money. I'm not saying don't do it. I'm just saying don't be a dumbass about it. That's what I'm saying.
The wealthy probably aren't doing that.
They do different investment things to put their money into things that grow tax free. Or, you know, like there's other things you can do besides just buying things to save money on taxes.
Gotcha.
There's investment strategies you can do.
Hold off on the truck. Like go buy something that.
Yeah, go buy some. I actually like back to recruiting and marketing. Like if I know who I'm going to use for recruiting and marketing, those are the two things that grow my business. I'll talk to my marketing guy and say, hey, can I pay you for a year's worth of service? Like if I already know I'm going to use you, what's it good? $10,000 for this year? Perfect. Like that's the money I want to spend. I'll go get the truck once they get me the clients. Or recruiting, I'll go sign up for a year's worth of that service if I'm trying to like spend some of my income before I go get the truck. I can get the truck whenever. But first I need the right dude and I need the customers to send that dude out to. I'll worry about the truck then.
All right, last question. Actually, second to last question. You get an inside look at all these businesses. I mean, it's pretty, the numbers don't lie. And what are the best businesses doing? Maybe it doesn't even have to be like from their financial systems, but just as operators, visionaries, what are the best businesses doing that maybe the mid-tier and lower tier aren't doing or getting wrong?
I think it usually comes down to leadership. It's usually on the people side. And again, don't take offense to this as a marketing person, but it's usually not the marketing. Like the marketing, we can kind of figure out, and we're naturally attracted to the marketing because it's way more fun.
Mm-hmm.
When I look back at a decade of running home service businesses, like there were really clear times where we did not grow or we went backwards, and it was never a marketing issue. It was always a recruiting issue or a retention issue. Like if we don't have good employees, our customers leave and get bad experiences. And so the best companies out there are like prioritizing recruiting and getting really good at that. If you win the employee game, the rest gets so much easier, and marketing gets way easier. Michael Gregory from Click Call Sell owns Hire Lead Chill with me, and he and I laugh because he will have clients that cancel his marketing service because they don't have enough employees. And I'm just like, you literally are choosing to stop growing your business because you can't find employees or lead them. And we're like, yeah, like you're focused on the wrong thing. Like go work on the recruiting thing.
Yeah.
The most successful business owners are the ones that aren't out there posting, nobody wants to work anymore. They're the ones that are posting, hey, here's a cool thing we just did with our team, right? I forget who it was, but I saw somebody, maybe it was JC, took his entire team out like shopping for shoes. Like we're just going to go buy you guys sweet shoes or go to the mall and we're going to like go shopping together. Like going and doing fun stuff and like building a really good culture and getting retention out of those employees so that you have the same good crew coming back. The best business owners focus on their teams. The customers will be happy if you have really good employees that are happy. And then everything else kind of falls into place. The rest is just what do you want to invest in next? Or do you need to go get another truck? Or, do I need to fix that piece of equipment? Well, half the time, if you have a good employee, they can figure it out for you. You don't even need to get involved in it. So I'd say, I know I'm like a broken record on the recruiting thing, but the best, most successful business owners figure that out. And if you figure that out, the rest falls into place.
Could you give us a little mindset shot in the back right now for owner operators that are like, why would anybody want to come work for me when they could just do it themselves? And if I'm starting a junk removal company or something, like why would somebody come work for me when they can go buy a truck? Or is this a common mindset?
It's a super common mindset, but like there's people working jobs all over the place. And think about the times as a business owner when you're like the most down, right? Being a business owner sucks. You're on an island. And so, yeah, you're going to find some of your employees want to go start their own business. That's fine. Like support them. They're probably going to come back. They're going to get there and be like, oh, I didn't realize you had to pay for all this shit and this insurance. Like I got to have insurance and I got to have this. And I just hired an employee and they left and quit and this sucks. And they're doing a really bad job. It's like, yeah, man, like welcome to be a business owner. All of my account managers that work for me could go start their own bookkeeping business. They all have the skills, right? But not everybody, like some people just want to show up to work and do the job the best they can. Not everybody wants to go on podcasts and go to conventions and go grow a business, right? Like we in a funny way, we kind of need each other. I don't want to do taxes, but I interviewed a couple people and they came to work for me to do taxes. And Jeff, who's kind of our main dude now, and Samantha, who's on deck for us to help with taxes. Like, I don't want to do their job. They don't want to do mine, right? They could sit here and talk to you, but I don't think it'd be their favorite thing to do in the world.
Yeah.
They don't want to sit on every demo call and have to sell it. They want to do the nerdy stuff behind the scenes, right? So it's like, yeah, if you only hire people that want to be business owners, that's fine. And let's say you're in junk removal, you're naturally going to have high turnover for sure. You're going to be hiring younger people that it's a stepping stone job and maybe they stick with you for a few seasons. That's totally fine. That sucks if you don't go recruit all the time, but like just always be recruiting and go find a bunch of good people. And we saw this, like our window cleaning business is no different. I'd say if we keep somebody for a year, that's good. If we keep somebody for 2 years, that's awesome. And if it's 3, 4, 5 years, it's outstanding. Owen on our team worked for us, super good kid. He had like camp experience, like doing kids camps and being like the counselor dude. Loves rock climbing. And so he would do like climbing camps and stuff like that. And it's perfect for window cleaning because those guys like going up and down stuff.
Yeah.
But just a super good guy, super good leadership qualities. And like has the world in front of him, right? He could go do anything. And he went and dabbled in some other stuff. Like he window cleaned for us and then went down his college path and career path. And then he came back and then we launched a high-rise business with him because he knows how to lead people and he likes climbing a bunch of stuff. And now he has the experience of our business. And now he's like starting to take on more of a general manager style role. So there's going to be people that like go test the waters, but growing a business is a bitch. Like when somebody goes and tries to do it, they usually understand like, oh man, there's way more moving parts than I thought there were. And they don't know the S-Corp thing. They're maybe not listening to this podcast. They don't know that they shouldn't go buy a bunch of stuff to try to save money on taxes. Like how invested are they really in growing that business? Or if you just take really good care of them and pay them well and support them and love on them, they're probably going to stick with you. And yeah, they could always go start their business. And if they do, like give them a hug and a high five and tell them you're there for them. Chances are they're going to come back. Or they're going to become a competitor, but it's way better to have good competitors that know how to run a business than shitty ones that undercut your price. And chances are that Andy, who runs our Minneapolis business, he and I were competitors and we were like buddies and we'd borrow each other's equipment and we'd give each other leads when we couldn't get to them. And then we merged and now he runs the business so I can be here talking to you. And so you just don't like, it's a scarcity mindset thing, right? When you're like, oh man, like what if they go out and do this? It's like, just support them. Like it'll come back. Like there's plenty of work out there. There's no shortage of work. There's going to be plenty of people that want to come work for you too.
Yeah,
so
fire. Man, I want to ask you so many more questions, but we got to wrap this up. Out of everything you've learned here, not here, but in your journey of life, business, ownership, you name it, what's the parting word for whether it's a word of wisdom, a challenge, just what do you want to leave the listener with?
Life is short. Build the business you want. Like it's yours. You can do it whatever the fuck you want. So if you're not finding good employees, go look in the mirror. If you don't like your profit margins, go look in the mirror. Like I had a buddy of mine that was in my CEO roundtable group and he had a funny epiphany where he was like, man, there's this thing I don't like about my business and this isn't going well. And it was funny hearing it from him firsthand because then it made me go down this path too. He was just like, and then I just realized, fuck, this is my business. I can do whatever the hell I want. And I was like, man, it's so simple when you put it that way and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, if it's your business and you don't like something about it, great. Cause there's like one person that can change it and it's you. So make it the business you want it. Like have fun with it. Yeah. You don't have to run it the same way everybody else runs it. Run it the way you like to run it. Yeah. And that might be a bunch of employees. It might be a helper. It might be no helpers and you're just doing your thing. There's no right answer. Like run the business you want to run. Don't run the business that people on Facebook try to tell you to run.
Yeah.
Like run your business and find good people that give you good advice. Don't post in Facebook groups and ask questions in groups with 10,000 people where most people are going to give you shitty answers. Like find good mentors, find good people that want to help you. Ask the right people the right questions and they'll lead you down the right path if you need some help figuring it out.
Amazing. Dan, thank you so much.
Hell yeah, man.
Let's go.
It's a pleasure.